Hey y'all, so today we are going to talk a little bit about diction and how it is that you should choose your words wisely. This is important for two reasons. One, for your effectiveness as a writer. You want to make sure that you're choosing the proper words, but also this will help you understand when you read literature, when you listen to other speakers, why they choose the words that they do. So we know this. Diction is word choice. It's the writer or speaker's choice of words. So effective diction is shaped by words that are clear, concrete, and exact. So what we mean by that is we choose words that communicate exactly what we want them to. So good writers avoid saying things like pretty or nice or bad because they're too vague. They're too generic. There's so many different ways you could be pretty. So you might describe someone as beautiful. You might describe someone as handsome. You might describe someone as gorgeous. You might describe someone as cute. And each of those words communicates something slightly different. It's the same reason why you want to try to avoid thing in your writing. It's just not specific enough. So good writers, effective writers, choose words that invoke a specific effect. So what that means is they choose words that let you know really precisely what they mean so that you can experience it with them. So here's a few examples from literature. So let's say instead of saying a door shuts, a door thuds. What's the difference? If I shut a door, maybe I'm closing it gently. Maybe I'm just pushing it. Maybe I'm slamming it. We don't know. We just know that it shuts. Versus if I say that a door thuds. Let's try this. Do you hear that echo? That's what it communicates. That it closes, and it closes with an echo of authority. All right, another example. If I say a coat is torn versus a coat is tattered, right? This image of something that's torn seems like a single tear. So let's say, because why not, that I have a sheet of paper, right? This is my coat, you can pretend. When I tear this, there's a very distinct sound, but am I tearing it once? Is the coat torn multiple times? Versus, if something is tattered, it's completely destroyed. It's old, it's torn all over the place, it's gone to pieces. I picture here like the baby blanket that you always slept with, right? It gives you a much more specific image. Last but not least, what if I said instead of wanting revenge, someone thirsts for it, right? What's the difference in wanting and thirsting? Well, want, okay, you want it, but thirst, it's like a need, right? When we have thirst, we need it to survive. So I don't just want revenge. It's almost like I can't live without it. So that's what you're going for. Picking words that really communicate the depth of the emotion and what's actually occurring. So when we pick words, all right, when we pick our words, sorry, it's frozen. When we pick words, sorry about that, guys, my PowerPoint wouldn't go. Try this again. When we pick words, there's a few things that should affect our diction. All right. People aren't always great about this, but there are 4 real things that you should consider. The first one is this, your audience. Who are you talking to? You choose your words differently considering who the audience is. If you're talking with friends, you can be really informal. You can be casual, right? Versus if you're in a job interview, you need to answer the question with more formality. So who you are talking to should change the types of words that you use. Similarly, what you are talking about should impact your diction, right? If you're talking about something fun and lighthearted, it's okay to make jokes or to be a little casual. If you are talking about a funeral or a tragedy, you want to pick words that reflect the somberness of the subject. So the word should be appropriate to what you are talking about. Similarly, the occasion. What this means is when am I talking? And not just at what time of day or what time in my life. Like, am I talking at a formal event? Am I giving a speech at graduation? Am I talking to the principal? Or am I telling my friends about something in the lunchroom, right? When I'm talking matters. I could be describing the same event and even to the same people, but because the timing is different, I choose different words. That's what good writers do. And then last but not least, why I am writing. Because you always want to consider your purpose. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you have 2 friends that are in a fight and you're talking in the presence of both of them. If your purpose is to smooth things over, if your purpose is to keep things from getting heated, you're going to use different words. If you're talking about the issue that they have, you're going to try to choose words that are more neutral, that aren't taking sides, that aren't inflammatory. Versus, sometimes people want to stir the pot, as they say. Then you might choose words that evoke more emotions, that remind them or that trigger anger, right? When you watch 24 hours news, for example, and you're watching commentators, oftentimes they say ridiculous things on purpose. They choose words that are intentionally inflammatory. Why? Because when people get angry, they tweet. When people tweet, people watch the video. When people watch the video, they talk about it more. And the more they get talked about, the more money they get, right? Their purpose is to make you mad. So, depending on when you are talking, what you are talking about, who you're talking to, and why you are talking, you pick different words. And authors do this too. So it's important when you're evaluating an author's diction or a speaker's diction to consider all of these things. So when you're actually choosing your words, right, when it comes down to your editing and your rising and you're thinking about why would I use this word? Or why would the author use this word and not another one? You always consider two things. We've talked about this a little bit. The first one is the dictionary definition. So the strict definition of the word, just what it means, right? Obviously, the definition needs to be accurate, but you also want to consider the connotation. So the words and emotions that, the emotions and associations that a word suggests. So it's possible that words have a dictionary definition that is different from their connotation. It's also possible that a word that means something to me means something slightly different to you. This is often where people get in trouble when they use words that carry a lot of weight and a lot of meaning and oftentimes a lot of negative baggage, right? You have to be careful with the connotation of the words that you choose. Just because the definition fits doesn't mean it's the right word for the job. So the easy example we always talk about to illustrate connotation is this idea of house versus home. So we know that both of these places by denotation are just a place where you live, your house and your home, the roof over your head, or whatever place that you call your residence, so to speak. But we also understand that the word home carries a much more positive connotation. House is just where you live. It might be a good place. It might be a bad place. A home is the place where you belong, right? So if you are trying to communicate that this is the place where you stay, you might just call it your house. If you are trying to communicate that this is not only the place where you stay, but it's the place where you fit, you might call it your home, right? So connotation is crucial to understanding what makes writers effective and what makes writing effective. So, a couple other things for you to consider. When we think about the connotations of words, they always fall onto a continuum. So what that means is there's a wide variety of meanings for words. So it's not just that a word is super, super negative or super, super positive. It can fall anywhere on the spectrum. A lot of times, there are a lot of different words that have the same basic meaning, but they have different connotations. So, a good example of this would be budget-minded versus penny pinching. So if you've heard these words before, you probably immediately have associations with them. Penny pinching versus budget-minded. Which one sounds the most negative? Pretty clearly penny pinching, right? When I hear penny pinching, I think of Ebenezer Scrooge. I think of someone who begrudges every penny that they spend or that they share, right? Versus when I hear budget-minded, I hear, someone who thinks through whether they can afford something or not. So I would put penny pinching, pretty negative on the spectrum. I would put budget-minded at least towards the positive, okay? Similarly, words have a different level of formality. So if I'm being really casual, we might just call that conversational. So the way that you and I might talk if we're just talking in class, or the way you might talk to your friend is conversational or colloquial. If you're using words like y'all and ain't or slang, that falls on the informal side of the spectrum. If you are giving a speech to Congress, I would hope that you're using words that fall on the formal side of the spectrum. So None of these things are set in stone. The context also affects the connotation, right? So it's always on a spectrum. It always has a range. It's kind of like the difference if I said that someone was, egocentric, which is like self-centered versus selfish. Self-centered might be towards negative, but it's not nearly as negative as selfish, which isn't nearly as negative as calling someone an egomaniac, okay? So these things are always a spectrum. So, once again, a final takeaway. Why does all of this matter? You want your words to have impact. So let's look at one quick example from literature. So this is an excerpt from Holes. It says, a red-headed woman was there with trout. Kay could see her rummaging through the cabin, dumping drawers and knocking things about. So when I read this sentence, I get an image of a woman who is frazzled. She's rummaging, she's dumping, she's knocking, something is bothering her, right? She's searching frantically. If we change the words, what would it mean? Kay could see her searching through the cabin, emptying drawers and taking things off the shelves of cabinets. All of a sudden, the woman sounds much less stressed. She sounds much more methodical. The basic meaning, the denotation, if you will, of both of these sentences is the same. But the imagery that you get, the effect that it has, is completely different. So, your goal moving forward is to be able to think critically about why authors choose the words that they do, but also to put thought and effort into the words that you choose to make sure that your words have maximum impact.